Video games are something we are all familiar with. It's been with us for decades now, from the very first spawn into whatever it evolved into today. As time goes on, the purpose of video games has become more broad as it is one of the media used to convey storytelling in a way books weren't able to do before. The rapidly growing popularity of video games also makes it one of the viable options for companies to make money. Although with these other goals in mind, the quality of video games has deteriorated, and major gaming companies create games that aren't able to entice players into playing their games. What could have possibly gone wrong? This is a video of a casual gamer's review of. To understand what that means, we have to briefly define what culture is. The word culture comes from Latin, colere, originally meaning to cultivate, till, or inhabit. In early philosophical usage, the term sometimes meant cultivation of the soul or mind. Over time, especially during the 19th and 20th centuries, culture evolved into a broader anthropological concept, not just refinement of the individual, but the shared beliefs, practices, tools, language, norms, and symbolic systems of groups of humans. The gaming community could be classified as part of a subculture of sorts. In the sociology of culture, a subculture is a group of people within a cultural society that differentiates itself from the values of the mainstream or dominant culture to which it belongs, often maintaining some of its founding principles. One of the examples of how gaming makes a cultural impact is fandoms. A fandom is a subculture composed of fans characterized by a feeling of camaraderie with others who share a common interest. Fans typically are interested in even minor details of the objects of their fandom and spend a significant portion of their time and energy involved with their interests, often a part of a social network with particular practices, differentiating fandom affiliated people from those with only a casual interest. The creation of these fandoms stem from either a video game franchise that's been established decades ago or a video game that's massively popular because of its quality. Examples of each one of the types are the Super Mario Bros. Fandom and the Five Nights at Freddy's fandom. Of course, it's not surprised that the Super Mario Bros. Has a fandom, as it is the franchise that created Mr. Video Game himself, Mario. The impact of these franchises leads to fans creating content surrounding the franchise within the digital space, such as SMG4 and Super Mario Logan, or SML for short. These creators make skit videos for YouTube including these Mario Brothers characters that garnered millions of views. Of course, the other fandom I mentioned hasn't fallen short when it comes to audiences, as the Five Nights at Freddy's game franchise became so popular that they made two movies about the game. Now, why have games nowadays haven't gotten more popular compared to the ones from the past? It's hard to tell because not all video games are the same genre and cater to the same audiences. One thing that remains consistent is that video games often let players experience a version of themselves closer to their ideal self. In some studies, people report being more motivated to play when a game allows them to be who they want to be. To quote an article about the ideal self, when players perceive deficiencies in themselves, they may seek to compensate for these through virtual characters, defending against threats to their self worth. Many popular theories of gaming engagement, such as self determination theory, argue people are more motivated when they make meaningful choices, feel capable, and connect with others. And games often provide exactly those. What I think matters the most to players is the purpose of the game. A lot of games that hit it big usually have the most of the same pattern, and that is the fact that they are made with the intention of creating something fun for the people to play with. An interesting story paired with engaging gameplay is the key to creating games that could make it big. The story in the game can be as simple as can be, or convoluted yet carefully crafted. What matters is that the game knows how to convey the message through storytelling rather than hammer the message into players' heads. One of the examples of how modern gaming studios fail to do the things I mentioned is Red Thread Games' Dustborn. that was published last year on August 20th. From first glance, you can already tell that this game was made by developers who are obviously more progressive than developers of old. Now, before I continue any further, I'd like to mention the fact that I'm not putting my foot down on any part of this political spectrum, because I'm not even from the US. This obvious design with the left party in mind played its part in not reaching a larger audience, as it alienates a portion of players who are not interested in the content. Obvious leftist inclusion aside, this game also didn't hit the mark on the previous point I made, which is what matters in a video game is that it's focused on the storytelling to convey their message rather than the message itself. People who have played this game complain that the story is all over the place, the characters are not likable, and the gameplay loop fell short.
I don't know if they just gave up or if they were fully expecting there to be multiple sequels to this story, but there's almost no closure to any story thread.
Core issue with Dustborn's story is excess. That word fits in almost everywhere. Whatever they could do, they decided to do all of the things, and most of them were things they didn't need to do, resulting in a product that feels intensely bloated.
Overall, it's a game that doesn't even know if it wants to be a game or not. This game tries to force a specific group's culture into the gaming community, and it couldn't even make an impact, as no one seems to proclaim themselves as a hardcore Dustborn fan, not even the people it's catered to. In contrast, one of the recent games to execute my earlier point is Dispatch, a game that was released throughout October and November of this year from Ad Hoc Studios. First impressions of this game is that it's heavily inspired by the superhero franchises, but most notably the Invincible series. This game is a narrative-driven point-and-click game in which you make choices to decide how the game's story will end. Now, does this game fulfill my previous point I made? Absolutely. The story of the game has a lot of thought and care put into them. The characters are charming, the chemistry between the cast is amazing, and the gameplay is simple. That's okay, since the main driving point of this game is the story anyways. The overall message of the story is about redemption, and they showed it in a way that felt natural instead of shoehorning it into the players' heads. On its peak, the game reached 124,407 players, and it clearly resonated with the gaming community as it successfully spawned a fandom of its own. In the beginning, I briefly mentioned that the gaming industry has gotten bigger over time, that it led companies viewing video games as an easy way to make money. One of the companies that adopted this mindset was the recently disbanded Firewalk Studios that failed to hit the general audience with their one and only video game, Concord. If you've been on the gaming space of the internet for some time, then Concord is a name that you may be familiar with. If you somehow don't know what Concord was, basically it was a 5v5 online hero shooter from Firewalk Studios, which is a company under Sony since 2023. The failure of Concord has a whole nother can of worms that I won't be able to touch on this video, since that would take too long. So I'm just gonna give you bullet points on what made it fail. The most major points to take away from Concord is that the characters are unappealing, their personalities are bland, the gameplay loop is mediocre at best, and the game costs $40 in a market where every other hero shooters are free to play. The biggest mistake Concord made was the fact that the characters available to play was unappealing both visual-wise and personality-wise, because this goes against the fact that players play video games for escapism and want to experience playing someone that could fit as their ideal self. Players who saw the marketing for the game in social media could already see that the game has no soul put into it, because the very purpose of the game from the very beginning was monetary gain, and not creating something fun that people could play and enjoy. On the day of its launch, barely any people played it. Sony, who already put too much time and money into the development of this game, couldn't bear seeing how big of a flop this game is. They weren't seeing a return on their investment into this project. So what did they do? They pulled the plug only 1 week after its launch, and took it off every platform and refunded the money for those who've bought it. Clearly, the game didn't even have a chance to make a positive impact on the players. On the other side of the spectrum, we have Marvel Rivals. Like Concord, Marvel Rivals is a hero shooter game developed by NetEase Games and released on December 6, 2024. A lot of people assume the game only became popular because it carries the Marvel brand, and while the name certainly gave it early momentum, its long-term success comes from qualities Concord simply didn't have. The character designs are unique, their personalities match their iterations from the comics and movies, the gameplay is fun and engaging, and of course, it's free. One of the biggest reasons Marvel Rivals resonated with players is that superheroes naturally tap into that desire for escapism and idealized self-image. When players choose characters like Iron Man, Spider-Man, or Scarlet Witch, they're not just picking a hero, they're stepping into a version of themselves that's powerful, confident, stylish, and larger than life. This instantly fulfills the ideal self fantasy that Concord failed to deliver, because Marvel's heroes already come with strong identities, rich backstories, and iconic abilities that make embodying them feel exciting, which is the core of why people seek escapism in video games in the first place. Obviously, the game succeeded in creating a cultural impact thanks to the passionate fanbase that formed around it almost immediately, with 642,333 players playing the game at its peak. So what can we take away from the comparisons I've made in this video? From all the games I've discussed, it's clear that a pattern emerges. The titles that successfully create a cultural impact are the ones players find genuinely engaging, whether through compelling storytelling or satisfying gameplay. These are games that feel authentic, created with the intention of being fun and meaningful, with players placed at the top of priority. Video games are a form of media within digital culture, and like any other medium, they can be works of art. Think of them like paintings. You can't overload a canvas with every message you want to express, because a message only resonates when it has the space to breathe. And similarly, you can create a painting with the sole intention of selling it, because that defeats the creative mindset of making something for people to enjoy. Great games follow the same principle. They resonate because they're crafted with purpose, passion, and consideration for the player's experience. Thank you for watching.